So I'm Jina. My pronouns are they or she. Either's fine. I'm super delighted to be here. I had this event on my bucket list when I saw all the tweets from last year, and I'm so stoked to be here. I'm a design systems advocate. I help designers and developers and other product practitioners in working together to create high quality experiences for their users. Just a little bit about me. I founded Clarity, which is a design systems community conference. You can ask me about that later if you're interested. I'm also a co-chair for the Design Tokens W3C community group. You can also ask me about that later. And in addition, I'm on the core team for SAS, which is a CSS preprocessor that I love. I help out with the brand design and the website stuff. So yeah, throughout my career, I've worked in design and development. I consider myself a designer that codes and no codes. I'm really into like craft and detail, communication, collaboration. So design systems have been like my niche basically for most of my career. I have been doing them for a while as an intern in 2004 at an agency in Memphis called Odin, all the way to my last job, which was Google. I was leading the design and developer relations team for material design, which is their design system. Unfortunately, I did get laid off, so if you're hiring, come talk to me. But enough about that. So I am here today to talk about design quality. So not too long ago, I was filling out an online form, and when I was filling out my name, it offered two choices that were required, which was like Mr. or Mrs., not even Miss, Mrs. And I didn't feel like either of those choices fit me. And I think a lot of individuals would say that neither of those choices might fit them. It didn't really seem like they put much thought into it. And then I got confused because I was filling out my phone number and it didn't tell me what format it required. And so I'm entering it the way I typically enter it. That didn't work. Had to like try it a couple times, and then finally I figured out like what the right format was. And then of course this is a long form. Once I got towards the end, the page crashed and I lost all my work and nothing got saved and I had to start over. And in addition, I also noticed that like it seemed like parts of the site had been redesigned and other parts had not been redesigned, and so the buttons were like moving around as you would go from screen to screen. So I was not happy. I'm sure some of you have experienced this before, filling out long forms or like dealing with complex UI. It was very chaotic. It was not enjoyable. And that actually like led to how I felt about that company. And quality can have an impact on how your company is perceived in a variety of ways. So, talking about pursuing design quality. What is design quality? I consider it the standard of a design when you measure it up against like other designs. It's like a degree of excellence of a design, not just like how it looks, but also in how it functions. And you can find that in like all sorts of different things, like a really good, well-designed door, or as complex as like an operating system. Like design quality is what makes these experiences great. And quality design is not like just a luxury as some people might think of it. It's a necessity. And we should all be striving for design quality in our work because it has an enormous impact on people. And people rely on designed experiences every day to make their work or their lives easier and enjoyable. So some of the benefits of thinking about this work: improved usability, user satisfaction, in terms of the people working on the product, reduce development time and effort, improve safety, brand perception, like the list goes on and on. Now, the reason I titled this talk Pursuing Design Quality and not Achieving Design Quality is that it is continuous work. There are always new challenges that are going to come up and like new ways to improve the experience. And there are a few key things that you can do to pursue in the pursuit of design quality and making that a part of your workflow. Pardon me. So I think the number one ultimate thing you can do is to create a culture of quality. And that means everyone in your organization is aware of the importance of design quality and is working to achieve it. And one way to do that is to make design quality a part of your product development process. So by having design quality be one of your key objectives, you're reminding everyone that it's important. And it's important to document that criteria. What is the specific criteria that you're looking for in the experience that you're designing and developing? And then you can use that as your guide and like determine how you're gonna measure success. Now, if you have design principles or experience principles, which some products and companies have, you can derive your criteria from those. So when I was at Salesforce, we had 4 design principles, and we used these principles to guide our decisions. The first one being clarity. Total coincidence that my event is also called Clarity, by the way, but clarity, it's all about eliminating ambiguity, enabling people to see and understand and act with confidence. The second one being efficiency, which is to streamline and optimize workflows. If somebody's having to do something and it takes them hours versus minutes, that can like lead to how much a user wants to use whatever it is that you're working on. So it's all about like helping people be better, work better, smarter, and faster. Consistency, which is all about bringing familiarity and strengthening intuition. And then of course, beauty, or you could say craft, it's all about like that thoughtful and elegant attention to detail. Now, the way we ordered these principles were in a very specific order, and we use that to help derive like our design discussions. So maybe something would be consistent, but it breaks efficiency or it breaks clarity. Well, then that thing might not be the best solution. And so if you can find a solution that actually can achieve clarity and efficiency, then maybe you're not as strict on how consistent it is. And so this was how we would use it as a tool to like determine, you know, what kind of design decisions that we would make. Before I was at Google, I was at Asana, and I was managing a team of designers that were working on design systems, accessibility, and visual design, as well as mobile foundations. And the director that I was reporting to had this project that she wanted me to work on, and she said, you know, we've been trying to do this, we keep starting it, and then we stop it, and then we start it, and we stop it, maybe you can do it. We need a quality criteria. And she's like, you know, we're always talking about, oh, that doesn't meet the quality bar, but what is the quality bar? Like, what actually does that even mean? And so that's what I set out to do, and that's what I want to share with you. So I started out by looking at Asana's experience principles. I'm not allowed to share all 5 of them because some of them are considered proprietary. I got permission to still share these. But the 2 that I was able to share was around providing value for every offering, and then leading with an opinion. And so looking at these things that Asana cared about with their experience helped me determine, okay, well, what are the things that are important to Asana, and what kind of criteria should we have for quality? Talked to a lot of people, PMs, design leaders, engineering partners, user research, data science, and so on and so on and so on. This actually took like a long process, because everybody has a lot of different opinions when it comes to what is considered quality. One thing that helped, though, is Asana actually had a framework that they used to give and provide feedback for people, and they call it do, try, consider. And so if you get a do when you get feedback, it's like, this is mandatory. You have to do this. This actually should be rare. This is like show-stopping stuff, but like, you know, it shouldn't be, like everything shouldn't be a do. Try is like, give this a shot. Like, try this thing that I'm suggesting I think would work, give it a shot, And then consider is like you don't necessarily have to try it, but like just think about it and see if that would impact what you're doing. And so we would apply this framework to all sorts of ways that we would communicate and talk about feedback as well as what was important in terms of design quality. So after a lot of iterations, this is the criteria that I landed on, and I will share it. So number one, first category, is inclusive. This was about building towards our mission of enabling, so these are gonna be some of Asana's goals when I talk about this, but you can like adapt it to whatever you're doing. So the mission for Asana was that we wanted world's teams to work together effortlessly and to account for the needs of all people. And so inclusive design was very important for us, all the people that are using the product. And this is obviously gonna be an iterative process. Like, it doesn't come overnight. And accessibility is a big part of that. It's a long-term commitment. It's not like overnight, like, oh, we hit all the check boxes, it's done. Like, it's just continuous. You're constantly working on it and striving. But beyond accessibility, we also wanted to consider other aspects like multifaceted diversity, localization, even like mindfulness and like digital well-being in our products. Like, there are a lot of different aspects that we wanted to account for. The second one was intuitive. And this is, you know, that customers using the product, they're confident in what they're doing. They know that what they're doing is gonna like get completed, they're achieving their goals, because that's the whole reason you would use Asana in the first place, was about managing the work that you're doing. Reliable is about like making people really feel like things are gonna work and work the way they're supposed to, because it's all about trust. I know there's a lot of text on these screens. I can share the slides later, but yeah, this was about like helping people feel confident that they're gonna be able to do their job, because that's the whole reason they're in Asana in the first place, is they're doing their job. Cohesive, I liked the word cohesive a little bit better than consistency, because sometimes things could be consistently not great. But cohesion, I felt, was more about creating that familiar experience. So for example, if you're using, let's say, Spotify in your car, it's gonna be different than on your iPhone, but it's still, there's like a brand alignment happening there. And so that's what we wanted to deliver. And then delightful, so like, not just helping people like get their job done, but making them feel motivated and rewarded when they're using the product. And so, as I mentioned before, priority order. Anytime you're making a list of principles or values, it's really good to put them in that priority order, because then you can stack rank decision making against that. So again, we have inclusive, intuitive, reliable, cohesive, and delightful. So then what I did from there was I took those criteria and I mapped them to the experience principles. And so, for example, providing value for every offering. I felt like really all the principles aligned to that. And then like lead with an opinion, inclusive and intuitive aligned to that. And as I mentioned, I couldn't share all the principles with you, but I did a mapping of all the criteria to the different principles. So that was Asana's that I worked on. I mean, everything is gonna be a little bit contextual to where you're working, what things are important to your company or your organization that you work for. But I'm hoping that will help kind of give you an idea of how to get started. So let's say you've done that process, you've gathered what your principles are, you've gathered your criteria, like what's next? And so what I found really helpful is to create a design feedback process. So I talked about the do, try, consider framework. If that works for you, fantastic. If you have a different framework in your organization, that's cool too. I think the important thing is to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language. Another thing I found really helpful, and obviously not everything can be boiled down to a checklist, because a lot of things are contextual, but they really can help with like the bare minimum of what people are focusing on. And so there are lots of ways that you can have design checklists. Like some people might do it based on their project phase or their deliverables. It could be even like within, like if you're a designer working in Figma, or if you're a developer working in, code, you can have what they call like, commit checks, pre-checks. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, but what I found really helpful is if you have these checklists, is to put them where people are already working versus creating like a separate place for them to go look at the checklist. So if they're already in Figma, put it in Figma. If they're already in GitHub, put it in GitHub. And the thing to also remember, though, is that design checklists or quality checklists, they're not a replacement for design review, design critique, design thinking. They're just a tool to help make sure you're checking the lowest common denominator issues, but there's always still going to be issues that you're working on, as different things come up. You want to make sure that you're not making this feel like a heavy process, because if you're like, oh, we have a new process in place, here's a 100-point checklist, nobody's going to want to do that. So you want to kind of keep it simple. And of course, establishing your goals and metrics. There's so many different goals and different metrics that might determine what you define as success in your company. So it's really hard for me to tell you exactly what those goals and metrics should be that you should look for. But what I can tell you is things you can look for is what kind of user feedback are you receiving? Are your users happy with the design? Are they even completing their task? And are they doing it efficiently? So a couple examples you might look at is increased customer satisfaction with the design of our product. That's kind of more of a qualitative thing, and you would do that through surveys and talking to your users. And then you have more quantitative data you might be looking for, reduced number of accessibility related issues reported in the audit. So that's a number you can track. These numbers were reported, we're reducing that number, and so it's a combination of the two. But I want to remind folks that, as I said, it is contextual for each organization, and the things that you track can be a moving target. So for example, your accessibility criteria is gonna probably get updated, as the standards organizations are updating their criteria, now you're updating your own. And so rather than seeing it as a target that you're trying to hit, you can look at it as milestones that are moving you forward. And then once you have your goals and metrics, one thing that you can do is to create a quality rubric and assess what you're working on against that. And so you might put it on a scale of 1 to 5. Is it inclusive based on what your criteria is? Is it intuitive? Is it reliable? These were the words that we used at Asana. You might have different ones, but creating that rubric can be very helpful. And you can make your tests specific to determine what that score is. Of course, I am a design system advocate, so additionally, I think it's really important to have a design systems practice. And I say practice on purpose because it's not a one-time deliverable, it's an ongoing practice. So these can include patterns, guidelines, components, anything that helps your designers and developers work consistently and efficiently. And it's all about removing duplication of efforts, as I said, inconsistencies, getting all your design and developers in the same place, talking the same language, and really building together towards an experience that's going to be really great for your customers. Lots of examples of design systems, Material at Google, Lightning at Salesforce, Carbon at IBM, and so on. There's a lot of examples out there. It's also not necessary that you have to put yours public, but it is kind of nice to look at them and learn from them when they are public. And then obviously testing early and often is critical. And when I say testing, I mean a combination of the automated tools that you do to find and fix issues, combined with also the people-driven testing that you would do through user testing. Both are essential towards quality. And I could give a whole talk on design tokens, which I'm not going to do right now. I'm a huge advocate for design tokens. If you're wanting to know what that is, you can find me later and we can talk about it. But I really think like this is a huge win because you get designers and developers speaking the same language, regardless if they're working in CSS, if they're working in iOS, if they're working in Android, Java, Python, like whatever their framework is, everybody's still speaking the same language. And the thing that I like to really like advocate for is like designers and developers working together. I really dislike the phrase developer handoff. Because when I think about developer handoffs, like designers do their thing, they throw it over the wall, developers do their thing, there's sometimes things that fall through the cracks. It shouldn't have to be that way. When you do things like design systems and design tokens, you can reduce a lot of tedious work, like building these red line specifications that are detailed, and then developers are trying to parse, like, you know, is this a thing that already exists, or do I need to create it? So we did this at Salesforce, and you know, before we did this effort, we had like 106 different text colors in our product, like 120 background colors. We had like 73 font sizes. It was a lot of work cut out for us, but by investing the time in design systems and design tokens, we were able to reduce a lot of that and like bring quality back into what we were doing. And you always hear that phrase, bridging the gap between designers and developers. And I asked, like, why is there a gap in the first place? Like, can we just get rid of the gap and, you know, just work together to begin with? So, down with developer handoff, up with things like design tokens. Oh, did I go really fast? Or, my bad. Anyway, you get the idea. So remove the gap altogether, get designers and developers together. I'm a huge fan of hybrid teams. Like having designers and developers on the same team is just a really exciting way to work. And then when you're thinking about your users and what you're doing, whether it's you're building design systems or you're building even just documentation, like maybe you have a developer community using your APIs, like making everything super, super easy for them to do the right thing and make it really, really hard for them to do the wrong thing. So anything you can do to like make things more approachable and easier is awesome. I think there's a lot of tools that have been coming out, especially in the last few years. I've been trying to make this helpful. One example I thought was interesting is, so I've been using Webflow to build out some of the sites that I've been doing like for my conference and stuff, and they've added automated like accessibility flags, so it'll tell you like if the color you chose is not gonna have enough contrast. Like, I love that kind of stuff, and obviously it's not gonna solve everything, but anything we can do to make things easier for our designers and developers, so much better. So, to sum up, creating a culture of quality is essential for producing great experiences, and by having a design criteria and having a feedback process, and using simple tools like checklists, design systems, design tokens, you can create a system where quality is the norm. And by testing early and often, you can catch those problems. And so I leave you with one question, which is, what are some steps that you will take to create a culture of quality in your organization? Thank you.